And welcome to the Friday episode of DB2. David Brem here with Daniel Butler as always. Butler, we get to talk about a lot of fun things about football on this show and big performances and even sometimes like people disappoint, which are interesting in their own right. But unfortunately, the world we live in. Today, we're going to talk about what the new COVID guidelines that the NFL is putting into place for the holidays, and how we think that might affect your fantasy team. I know it's a weird way to think about it, but hey, we talk fantasy. Let's uh, let's see what it might. So, just to give everybody kind of a heads up, if you haven't read, through November 25th through December 1st, the NFL has implemented everybody has to wear masks inside, much heavier testing, as well as. Uh, Going forward, the NFL teams are required to have surveillance cameras in their facilities that the NFL can then review up to 30 days after to see how they're uh, handling or following the guidelines. So,
Can I just point this out real quick? We are
yeah,
not a news play,
no, no,
and make sure I don't want make sure this is just like straight from like ESPN, Sports
oh
Illustrated.
yeah,
We're just like reading what they're saying. So whether you agree or disagree with it, that's not what we're just going to talk about. It seems silly to talk about COVID and fantasy, but
but it
like
could have some
we
impacts.
don't like sometimes you don't want to just this fantasy is fantasy, you kind of it's fun, and but you
Yeah,
do have to think about your fantasy team. You don't want to put people out there that's going to give you 0 points. All right, we want winners. All right.
we're in the
So,
home stretch. We need every point we can get.
uh, so again, this is just like we're going to talk about obviously the what's going to happen and the ramifications because we're expecting probably some more people in COVID protocol. Okay,
Yeah. And
go
you
ahead.
you exactly you literally just covered exactly what my next line was going to be. So what we're going to talk about is what do you do with your bench, because we do expect more people at this point to probably be on that COVID list. Whether that is they test positive, some kind of disciplinary, they weren't following protocols, any kind of that. So I mean, like I said, not the biggest issue in this situation, but for a fantasy show, it can affect what you're doing. So does this affect in any way how you're going to maybe structure your bench going forward?
I think a little bit. I do want to just one more thing with this. This is I don't think you said they are going to be tested. I think twice after they
Twice
get back.
immediately after
They
Thanksgiving,
get back
yes.
right, and they have like that week of where they're wearing masks, and
Mhm.
they're encouraging but not requiring, from what I understand, visiting friends and family to also be tested. And
Yes.
this again, if they because there's more whatever you think about testing, mass testing and stuff, if they do end up testing positive, even if the player doesn't test positive, now they're a close contact, so there's a good chance they're still held out, in certain situations like
Yeah,
that. So there's just more people that are testing, and then that's more opportunities for close contact. So even more opportunities for players to be in the COVID protocol. So
exactly.
there's a really good chance that there will be a lot of players that will miss, and we'll see if it affects any games or anything like that if there's a mass amount of players. But yeah, so I was thinking about like a lot of times the players that I say you only like you either play them or you don't pick them up. Right? Like, they're only used as like if you're gonna play them. So
Yeah.
like if you're not playing them, there's no reason to pick them up. Like they might just be like a 1 week thing or something like that. So I do think that during this time, especially that players that are more handcuffs, uh, that or maybe you just don't really see the field that you could. It may not be a bad idea. I'm thinking of like not now because Mike Davis is. I don't really think Mike Davis has any upside, but a Mike Davis
Yeah.
type player where he's safe, right? He's been safe up until the last couple of weeks. Where he's a top 30 guy. I think he does have a little bit more value because he's on your bench and he can immediately give you 10 points or whatever. That's a guy,
Uh-huh.
somebody sitting there that you can just plug in and give you 10 points, as opposed to a lot of players on your bench just kind of waiting for something to happen. But obviously, if those starters end up getting into COVID protocol or get injured, then those guys are having way more value than a Mike Davis or someone else. So it obviously depends a lot on where you're at in your standings. Depends on like certain things like like do you have the flexibility to keep a player that obviously doesn't have much value unless the starter goes down. So like a Alexander Madison,
Yeah.
for the that might be somebody who unfortunately on a week you might have to part ways for that week. Even if you own Dalvin Cook, or even if you just that's a you might have to get rid of him. So there are players that you've been holding on to where you might have no other, because he doesn't have any, you can't play him. So like
No.
if Dalvin plays and you need to put a running back in, like you're probably going to get very little points out of an Alexander Madison, as opposed to somebody like pretty much a lot of other running backs. You could at least get somewhere between 5 to 10 points, and that could be the difference between a win. But if you're in a great spot playoff wise, and you're looking good, then you might be okay. Like that might be where you just plug in Alexander Madison. Like if you have no one else, and you plug him in and be like,
Yeah.
I can lose this week, and
I
it's
don't
not
want to
that big a
risk the rest
deal.
of my
Yeah.
season. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
think
I think
about
that's 100% correct. I think, and here's the thing is like, it seems like a situation where handcuffs would be more important. Like, my first thought was, oh, handcuffs are going to be way more important. But then you really think about it, like, if the star goes down, like, if star tests positive, or there's a reasonable chance the backup is going to be in close
close
contact
contact? Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So, like, the handcuffs, they're even more linked with that guy because now they both could be out. So, yes, I think handcuffs become less important for a couple of weeks. We've talked about handcuffs only for a certain amount of guys, anyways. Um, I think guys who are on the waiver wire, like fringe guys who play on like Monday night games or Sunday night games, are going to be very important because you just have more time. Like, you can replace more people with those guys. So those guys are going to be more important. And honestly, I am not super up all the time on who is on our waiver wire. Like, I look when I'm making my claims, I look on like Sunday if there's anybody that I missed that could get plugged in. I think right now you kind of have to be very aware of who is available and who you can late in the week pick up and fill in. This is another situation where it might be a time to carry a second decent quarterback. Like, if you're in a league where there's a lot of quarterbacks owned and there's like one guy on the waiver wire who's worth anything, maybe you have a second quarterback just in case. We don't usually say carry a second quarterback. Maybe now is the time in case your guy goes down. There's just so many situations where it's more about being aware right now of what's available, what can I do, because we're to the season where you've kind of dialed in what you want your lineup to be. Like, for the most part, you know who your guys are going to be. You might have a couple of positions that change, but this could be very rapid, like late notice. These guys are out. This isn't going to be a situation where like they go down and, oh, he's going to be out next week. Like, this could be Saturday night, Sunday morning. He can't play. He tested positive. So I think you need to be aware of your waiver wire. I think handcuffs become less important because, like I said, they're probably going to be in contact tracing. And I think the quarterback position is now a position you almost have to carry a second one just in case your main guy goes down. Because we've talked about it. The waiver wire for quarterbacks is not pretty in most leagues.
Yeah, and you just with especially with running backs and wide receivers, I think which you mentioned, like there's a person, if you are a Cook owner, or if you're a
McCaffrey,
or
like,
McCaffrey owner, like there, if this is a thing, like if even if they are in the protocol, the same thing. You remember Green Bay, a lot of those
yeah,
they had to miss a lot of.
the wide receiver room got decimated.
There's a good chance that a lot more than just them are the ones out. So, which so if the only way you play a Alexander Madison or a Hubbard is if the top guy, McCaffrey or Cook, go down, right? So that's the only way you play them. And this right now is the number one issue of why somebody would miss any games, right? Like obviously COVID,
Yeah,
injuries do happen, but COVID, the cases they said in the art on the rise are kind of like where they've been. They haven't really risen too much, but they're obviously there's still a lot. There's a lot of people testing positive, and if you test more, you're going to have more positive. It's just the way, like there's
that's how stats
some
work.
people are that have COVID and never get tested. And so if you test more, and then obviously there might be a small percent that do test positive that aren't, but still that, I mean, it doesn't, like if you as you
It
test
still
more,
starts a circumstance. Yeah,
you're going to have more positives, and the NFL says they're going to be testing more, so there's going to be more positives, and they haven't said anything about, they're not going to loosen the protocol at all on how
no,
long you miss, so that still stays in effect. So it's just one of those things that, yeah, I do think handcuffs or you definitely, I think being involved in a lot of different offenses too may not be a bad idea if you
Yeah,
can. So like if you're
as many
kind of
teams as
if you have
possible.
somebody like a Tim Patrick, let's say, and maybe in a deeper league, but a wide receiver, you got and then Jerry Judy or Cortland Sutton, it may make sense to, if you have like somebody like that, to try to get somebody that you kind of feel is on a sim, like, because if Sutton's out, there's a good chance Patrick could be out too, and then you got to find a, and again, that's maybe in a deeper league. I just threw out a couple names, but
No, but
maybe
the point
if
stands.
you could
If
kind
you wanna
of,
go with bigger names, go like Cincinnati. Like, if for some reason you have Chase and Higgins, like, I'd make sure I'd have guys on my bench that aren't in that locker room.
yeah,
Like,
like if you had Boyd, like if, and then maybe again that might
yeah,
be a deeper league, but if you have Boyd, probably don't need him, or if you're
yeah,
not in a deeper league and you had Boyd and maybe you have a deep bench, you probably could just get rid of Boyd, right? There's no circumstance probably that Boyd sees. There's a, I mean, I guess if somehow he's not a close contact, which could happen, and they're out, then he would have some good value. But again, just some things to think about with that. And the big thing with this is obviously this is just a fantasy. That it's not
yeah,
overly important when it comes to life and death and hospitalizations and all that. 100% give you there, but we're talking. That's all we're talking about, right? We're
yeah.
fantasy or
We're
a
not a
fantasy
news
show.
show.
Yeah, we're like we don't do that, though I would be open to it, but whatever. But it's fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes not really. The comment it's maybe not that fun. But anyways,
I don't know if
uh,
the fun is the word I'd use, but
yeah, so just stuff to think about as you or make sure you always pay attention to these sort of things. And if you really want to dive into it, there's some things that you could think about, like, okay, if this person, maybe like, if something happens here, what would I do? And kind of play that what if game with your lineup. Would you be comfortable with this person playing in, or is it somebody on the waivers that you would be more comfortable with playing, but maybe you're like, I like this guy more on my bench. But if it's somebody you feel more comfortable playing, that might not be a bad idea to drop one and pick up somebody else as we get close. Again, this is next week. It start like the 25th after Thanksgiving.
yeah,
So after Thanksgiving, we're going to see rampant testing more than we're seeing now, and maybe even friends and family getting tested as well.
yeah,
Again, that's not there. I don't know if clubs will take the consideration that the NFL said if they don't have to, but some probably will. So uh,
yeah. It could be a good time. Like, there could be guys dropped that would in no other situation be dropped. So if you're in a good position and you're able to just pick people up for the playoff run or something like that, keep an eye on that waiver wire because I think we're going to see some names on there that we never expected to see because people are going to be in the situations we're talking about.
or like if they drop somebody that is in COVID protocol, you
Yeah,
can go ahead and pick them up.
exactly.
That's probably the
Yeah,
people that you would probably not a lot of people are thinking like build your lineup around what ifs, but when you
yes,
see that happen, now you can think about that and build your. It's not a bad idea to have contingency plans, of course. But if you see somebody a top a top 10 quarterback maybe, and you don't have one of those, or you have like a streaming out get dropped because of COVID, and they don't want to drop somebody on their bench, or a wide receiver, a top 30 wide receiver that again sort of thing, or a tight end or whatever, and you're like, that's an instant upgrade for me in a week or two when they're back, because they're not obviously
exactly.
going to be out for the season. So you might be able to ride them for the last few weeks of the season, especially if you're in a good spot in your playoff run. So if you're already well in position to make the playoffs, then you can take more risk, and whether it's taking zeros on a week or not playing a defense or a kicker, then you don't play a defense though. I know you say like you don't like kickers, obviously, but
I don't.
would you, if you took a zero, would it be a kicker or would it be a defense?
I think probably in that situation, probably defense, just because there's like no chance a kicker gives you negative.
Yeah,
But
defenses can. My wife played the Cleveland defense this past week against New England and got a big fat -6.
yeah,
So,
always super helpful. Um, but yeah, like we said, it's a much more it's a much bigger conversation, the whole thing. But when it comes to fantasy, there's gonna be implications here, and we want to try to help as much as we can. So keep your eye on the waiver wire, whether that is knowing who you can pick up if you need to, or knowing who somebody else had to sacrifice to make their team work because they need a win this week. So um, maybe we'll be able to upgrade some teams or at least just keep you ahead of everybody else in your league.
Yeah, just stuff to think about. Of course, if you did enjoy the video, hit the like button. I know this is kind of a different video. We've never talked anything like this, but obviously, if you followed the NFL season, which I'm guessing you have, if you're watching a fantasy football, you know that COVID is, and if you're just real world, is a big part of
Yeah.
our lives now. So it's a big part of everything. I mean, you could make a COVID. You could be playing Roblox and talking about COVID, or playing, I don't even know, Minecraft, or I don't even know. Why is those the only two things that popped in my head? I don't know. I
I
there
didn't even know
there
what I'll
are
be our cards on the table. I didn't know what one of those two things was.
there are other videos out there that do exist. I think on YouTube, Coco Melon, a kids show that my son really loves. So you could be talking about that and doing a commentary on Coco Melon, and this comes up. So it is a part of our lives. I don't know why I'm saying all this, but thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. Not too long of a video. I hope it was entertaining enough to last your attention for what, 15, 16 minutes. I think that's not too bad. I don't know. We hit everything, I think. Hit the
I
like,
think. Yeah.
subscribe if you're not already. I think we're like closing on our 450 right now. So
Mhm.
thank you to
We
all
we
who
have
have.
much more fun videos than this, I promise. Like if this is the first one you came across and you're thinking like, I don't know if I want to subscribe, I promise. Most of them are much more fun than this.
But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, comment, like, subscribe if you're not already, and thank you so much for watching. I know this is kind of an off week a little bit, but we'll still have one more video after this. So
Yeah.
with talking about injuries and all that all over the weekend on Saturday, should be out on Saturday. But thank you so much again. You guys are great, and that's all we got. Have a good one. See ya.
See ya.